And welcome back, everyone. We have a great show for you today. This show is all about the business of sports betting. And so we're going to go back to the very beginning, at least in the U.S. anyway, of how U.S. sports betting has exploded across the country. And the story is one that a lot of insiders know about, but many people don't. It all starts in the great Garden State of New Jersey, and we have no one better to tell that story than Barbara DeMarco of Porzio Governmental Affairs. She's a government affairs consultant in New Jersey, specializing in the gaming industry. We won't say for how long, but it has been a long time. It's shocking. I think she started when you were, 8 years old?
Something like
yes,
that.
as a gaming consultant. Barbara, thanks so much for coming on the show and for telling the story. My good long time New Jersey friend.
Yes. Jim and I have worked together. We've tried to promote some new ventures, and sometimes successfully, sometimes they get bought out, a lot of merger and acquisition. But yes, I enjoy my friendship with Mr. Breslo.
And we have a new venture with this beautiful podcast that is blowing up all across the country. So my ties to the area is I lived in Philly from 75 to 79 as a kid. And I have this recollection that my father invested in Resorts International. And this was at the time when there was all the speculation about New Jersey and getting gaming and so on. And I think Resorts International finally got approved with their license, what have you, and the stock went to the moon. And then something else happened that caused it to go the exact opposite way. And I just remember my mom being very upset with my dad that he rode the stock all the way up and then put more money in as it was going up and up and up. And then he lost everything. I mean, we weren't thrown out on the streets or anything, but it was a stressor between my parents because my dad kept doubling down on Resorts International. And I don't remember what happened. Do you know what happened with Resorts International in Atlantic City?
It's still there. And it is the first casino hotel in Atlantic City, mid-70s, 1970s. What had happened was, and again, I was very young at this point, but my recollection is they tried to pass a statewide referendum to allow for casino gaming, and it failed miserably. And they came back and they did it just for Atlantic City. And because Atlantic City was in such economic distress and there isn't economic diversity down there, this would have diversified the economy, and it passed just for Atlantic City.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting how the history of gaming all across, it's all, usually there's some dire situation that needs to be addressed. With the tribes, we've got that situation where the tribes were essentially given gaming, and look what that has done. You kind of have these three powerhouses of gaming as far as the development of it in the US. I'd say, what Nevada has done, obviously, and then what's going on with the tribes, and then what's going on with New Jersey, and starting with Atlantic City, and ultimately resulting in being the first state to legalize sports betting. Have to go to the United States Supreme Court to ultimately get it approved, but it was New Jersey that did all of that and was the first to implement sports betting. And now you've got close to half the states having followed it. Some of the big ones still yet to come. Florida's not there yet. Texas is not there yet. California's not there yet, but it all started in New Jersey. So give everybody, just the backstory as to how New Jersey became the first state to get sports betting.
Okay. First, the first thing I will say is generally you will find that state legislatures prefer gambling legalization, cannabis legalization, higher taxes on cigarettes because they're considered sin taxes. And essentially, if you don't participate, you don't pay. And that's a lot better than having your property taxes raised or your corporate business taxes raised. So it's an attractive thing for any state that's having financial issues or has a depressed area that you want to invigorate with new economic development. So all those things were present in New Jersey. So what happened was we had bricks and mortar gaming, and then the state of New Jersey, without passing a referendum, legalized internet gaming first. And that was done prior to sports wagering. And technically, we're the second state who did that. Delaware, I think, was first, but because they have less than 1 million people, It just didn't make the money it needed. You needed that larger population base, both for sports wagering and internet gaming, to make it viable. So they passed a law that said as long as the servers were in Atlantic City geographic area, you could offer internet wagering just in the boundaries of the state of New Jersey to New Jersey residents. But the servers themselves would have to be in Atlantic City proper, because our Constitution says that all casino type gaming must be in the geographic limits of Atlantic City. So that's how they got around the referendum. So you have that in place. So the DGE, the Division of Gaming Enforcement, which is, I would say, probably the best regulators in the country, and certainly the most innovative and progressive in trying new things, they had already become somewhat of an expert on doing internet gaming online. So you saw already an investment from some of these companies into that first section. Now, that was limited just to the casino industry. The racetracks in New Jersey, and there were 3, did not participate in that, and they were not part of that because it was tied to the original gaming law that allowed for internet gaming to be in the geographic limits, and the racetracks weren't, so they were prohibited. So
to be clear, it had to be hosted by the casinos themselves,
right?
And it was not sports; it was just your basic, typical casino games. And did it actually go live?
It went live almost within 6 months of the passage of that law. So you have 2 really good things happening here. You have population density, you have a law like our internet gaming law that was in place, where some of these companies were already investing in the platforms in partnership with the casinos, and you had regulators doing it. So that was a perfect structure to launch a challenge to the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, or PASPA, which was a 1992 federal law that actually was championed by our senator here at that time, Bill Bradley, NBA player, Princeton graduate, who was the New Jersey senator at the time, who wanted to prohibit betting online on sports. So that law passed, and everyone always thought that it was something that could be challenged. So let's fast forward a little bit. And New Jersey had a chance to be exempted from that law, like Oregon, Delaware, Nevada, and Montana, who were grandfathered in, but the New Jersey voters voted that down. They didn't want to be part of that. So they had an opportunity. There was a 1-year period after the passage of that law where they could have allowed it, and at that time they did not want to expand that ability to gamble on sports, and so it didn't pass. So you fast forward now to 2018, a law is passed that allows well, let's back up a little bit. Earlier, I want to say it was probably around little after 2014, they put a law through that would allow for sports wagering, and it was immediately challenged. And using a small racetrack called Monmouth Park, which was owned and run by the thoroughbred industry, because they had no ties to big casino, big entities. They were essentially the partners of Governor Christie, who took this all the way up to the Supreme Court. And it took so many years that, fast forward, Governor Murphy comes in, and it becomes his case when finally it's decided.
Yeah, and right. So let's talk about the federal law for a second that was passed, and you said that it emanated from New Jersey and in Governor Bradley,
Senator
Bradley. The ultimate downfall of that law, correct me if I'm wrong, was that it had exempted certain states. So it basically grandfathered in. If a state had already had some form of sports betting, then you were okay. We're not going to shut you down. But any other state that wants to join you, no, sorry, you're too late. There's now a federal law that says that you can't do it. And that ultimately is what the Supreme Court objected to about that law and caused them to overturn it, correct?
Right. I think it's, I'm not a constitutional expert, but my understanding is that's exactly what the situation was, that you can't allow certain states to offer something and then prohibit others from doing it. I mean, they have to be treated equally. So
Right.
yeah,
And it was,
I think
and
that's a
it was,
big part of it.
yeah, and it's really fascinating today to look at that case and look who the parties were and what sides they were on. And all of the major sports leagues, NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, NFL, they all were supporting that law. They all wanted to keep in place the nationwide ban on sports betting, other than in these handful of states, Nevada being obviously the biggest one, where you had to be in the casino to place the bet. And the major sports leagues liked this law at that time. They wanted the Supreme Court to uphold the law to keep this ban in place. Supreme Court ends up striking down the law. And here you fast forward to today, and you're like, all the leagues are embracing this, and it appears to casual observer, they're making gobs of money off of it.
Well, what was fascinating to me is you're absolutely right. They absolutely opposed it. The casino industry, because they were concerned with licensing issues and if the court case had gone the opposite way, they kind of stayed on the sidelines. And it was this one little track that kept pushing forward because New Jersey doesn't allow slot machines or any form of casinos with our racetracks or racinos, like Pennsylvania, Delaware, New York, all our border states, and they were dying on the vine. So it was this, or there would be no thoroughbred or standardbred racing in New Jersey because it just couldn't survive because it's a regional sport. So they pushed forward, and eventually they were the ones who caused this to happen. But what I found fascinating is after the law was passed and Governor Murphy signed it, the one that actually was enacted, they wanted a piece of the pie. They wanted to be able to charge for their signal, the sports teams. And I'll never forget that day because, New Jersey people, we're authentic, we're raw in many ways, and my legislators are no different. They're very bright, but they're not these polished Wall Street looking types of Ivy League professionals, and this is who the league sent in. Well, this was the same group that had opposed the law. This was the same group that's coming in and saying, now give us a piece of it. And then you were sending with our very unique legislature all these polished, very, Ivy League-like guys, and I've never seen a panel more just decimated by questioning by a state legislative committee. They just did a job on them like you couldn't imagine, because they were furious they even had the gall to get up there to ask for a piece of the money.
What were they asking for? Because it's a really interesting angle as we sit here today, because as far as I know, none of the sports leagues are directly benefiting from the sports betting. They're benefiting from it because they're getting a ton of advertising and a ton of sponsorship and probably additional viewers. But what you're saying was that at the very outset, they were also asking for a percentage of all the action.
Well, they wanted to be paid for the signal. They felt that that was their property, and there was precedent for that. Right now with racing, you pay to send. So if New Jersey wants to take the Kentucky Derby, which is a grade 1 stakes race, and Triple Crown race, and you want to show it in New Jersey, you have to pay Kentucky a vig of almost 19%. It's negotiable for that signal or that feed. They wanted something similar for each of their games. So that's what they were looking for that. Generally it's 3% on a race that's being sent or received. That's what you pay. But for your really high end would be your Super Bowl or your Grand Slam tournament or Major League Baseball World Series, you pay a much higher vig for that signal. So that's what they were looking for, was something to pay for the feed.
Well, the funny thing is I'm sure one of the reactions of them all, not to mention what you said, which is, wait a minute, you guys are the ones opposing this and now you want to benefit from it. But it's like, what do you mean pay for your feed? You guys are already on television. These are major televised sports all across the country, this is for another show. But, what seems to me what happened to horse racing was it did not want to be broadcast, or it charged significantly for the broadcast because they made their money through people betting on it. And if you just broadcast it everywhere, then all the bookies would make money off the horse betting, and they didn't want that. So horse racing did not want to be a televised sport. In the meantime, all these other sports leagues are getting rich off of television, and the king of sports, horse racing, ends up kind of going down while all the other sports are going up because horse racing doesn't want to be on TV.
Well, that's because they had the only game in town. I mean, running numbers, there was not even lottery in the 40s and 50s when there was betting on horse racing. I mean, they were the king of sports because that was the only one you were betting on legally.
Right. But it's mixed. Yeah, exactly. So it was a product created to gamble on it, as opposed to simply be enjoyed. Right. All the other sports were to be enjoyed. In fact, you weren't supposed to gamble on them. And horse racing, no, the whole point is to gamble on it. Yet it is a sport, and it's a pretty compelling sport. But you need television to tell that story. Television does a great job of adding the drama.
Biggest mistake they
sports.
made. Biggest mistake horse racing ever made was not being televised. But again, I think the mentality at that time was we don't need to be televised. We're the only game in town. And that slowly over decades became eroded with Las Vegas, and then lottery, and then Atlantic City, and then, other states offering bricks and mortar gaming and convenience markets, less resorts, because I still think the only two big resorts are Atlantic City and Las Vegas, Nevada, and maybe Reno, like Hot Tahoe area. I guess you could say the area around New Orleans, Biloxi, there are strips of casinos there, but they're really only an East Coast and a West Coast destination.
Yeah.
And the rest are pretty much convenience markets.
All right, well, let's pick up the sports betting history story after the break with how exactly it did get implemented in New Jersey, and then how it's been followed elsewhere. So we'll be back after the break with Barbara DeMarco talking about New Jersey's role in the expansion of sports betting in America.
Hi, everyone. I'm Veronica Dudo, and welcome to Buy,
Hold, Sell. If you have the Russians that are going into Ukraine, the Americans and the Germans and everyone else in Europe is going to say, hell no.
If Russia doing things, logically was their MO, I'd agree with you. Yeah, Todd, why don't you get him on a phone call right now? Hello.
Financial News TV, just the way you like it. Fast-paced, unadulterated, in-your-face, rock and roll style. Join us next time on Buy, Hold, Sell Live.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to remember all that. I can't even remember.
Oh, God.
Yeah, well, that doesn't. I want you to, oh, my God. Fast pace, no. Oh, sorry.
Take one.
Fast pace, no holds barred, in your face, rock and roll style.
Woohoo!
Good sign.
Let's kick some
And welcome back, everyone. We're talking to Barbara DeMarco, Government Affairs Consultant for Porzio Government Affairs in New Jersey, expert in New Jersey gaming, which these days is mostly about sports betting. We're walking through the history. So we've got the 2018 after the Supreme Court has rejected the challenge to the New Jersey law that all the sports leagues had brought, and said that no, the federal government can't say that some states can allow sports betting while others cannot. So the law was struck down, and New Jersey was able to move forward. And one interesting part about the law that was going to allow it, and this is very common for states to do this, they don't just say that, okay, sports betting is now legal. Anybody who wants to open up a sports betting business, go ahead and hang a shingle. The states are usually very specific about who is allowed to offer the sports betting. So for instance, in California, we just had two monster initiatives. Both of them failed, but it was all about allowing the tribes to offer internet sports wagering. If you're not a tribe, you don't get to offer it. Why would you limit it only to tribes? Well, because the tribes in California are very powerful. They got tons of money because they got all the casinos, and they made sure that it was written that way. They both failed, however. So similarly in New Jersey, the law was very specific. It didn't say just anyone could open up an internet sports wagering site. It said only if you have an Atlantic City casino license or if you are a racetrack. Is that right?
Yep, absolutely. That was exactly it. However, I will tell you, I'm going back to the internet gaming law authorization. There was a bill prior to the one that was signed where they did try to allow for internet cafes, which would have been non-casino tied internet platforms to offer some form of casino gaming. And Atlantic City went nuts because you would be competing against something that was out there like they do in Europe. I mean, because they aren't tied to casinos, but these companies had made millions upon millions of investments into the bricks and mortar. And then you're going to allow someone to come in and just shut up shop and take bets that would have generally come to you if there wasn't an internet wagering law. So that was struck. The initial law was absolute vetoed by Christie that did internet gaming because of that, internet cafe portion of the bill that would have allowed anyone to come in and offer a platform for that. So again, it set precedent for when this bill was regulations were done and the body of the bill said these are the entities that can do it. However, use sports wagering platform provider, DraftKings, FanDuel, whatever, you can partner with either a racetrack, and racetracks have what they call 3 skins or 3 partners. And then the casino industry, each hotel, I believe, has 7 skins attached to it. So 7 sports wagering platforms can enter into a partnership with Caesars or Borgata, which is MGM, and they set up this partnership. Something's paid to the land-based casino from the operator, and they are allowed to take bets in the state of New Jersey. So that's how you get around. How do these other companies get to be players? They get to be players by partnering with the bricks and mortar casino or racetrack.
Right. And therein helping those industries. Atlantic City was not doing well at the time at all because it went from having there only being essentially Las Vegas and Atlantic City as gambling sites in America, where due to Indian casino spread, they're popping up all over. New Yorkers no longer have to go to New Jersey. They can go to Mohegan Sun, which is even closer, right, than New Jersey.
Well, it's about the same to
Or about the same.
Connecticut. Yeah.
So Pennsylvania approved casinos.
Pennsylvania was one that was the most devastating to Atlantic City. When you saw the numbers at our height, which I want to say in the 90s, it was about $5 billion in Atlantic City. I think it was 2004, Rendell passed Pennsylvania, and I'm doing this from memory, so my dates could be a little bit off. But what you saw when they became full-fledged casinos is exactly the amount that Atlantic City lost, which is about $2 billion transferred over to Pennsylvania. So their numbers were exactly the loss that was coming from the Atlantic City bricks and mortar.
Right. So New Jersey realized we got to do something to protect this industry, and therein lies the birth of sports betting. But in addition, your horse racing industry was really dying on the vine, and also they swooped in to save them, right?
Right. The sports wagering, there are 3 skins assigned to each racetrack. There are 3 operating racetracks. They are Freehold, which is owned by Penn Entertainment and Parx. Then there's Mr. Gorell's track, which he has his own casinos up in Tioga, Downs, and I think Saratoga. He owns the Meadowlands, and he also owns the Bayonne off-track wagering. And then you have Monmouth Park, which is owned by the Thoroughbred Horsemen.
So you had 3 racetracks that were allowed to get 3, like, as you say, skins websites, essentially gambling websites each. And then how many total casinos in Atlantic City got them?
Well, you have the Caesars owns 3 properties. So they own the Trop, Caesars, and Harrah's. So that would be one entity in and of itself, even though they would have technically 21 skins attached them, 7 per property, they don't exercise that 21 skins that they own. Then you have MGM, which is Borgata. You have Golden Nugget. You have Ocean Resort, which is probably the newest casino. Then you have Hard Rock. Well, actually, Hard Rock is the newest, but it's in an older building. Newest infrastructure is Ocean. You have resorts that's still there, and you have Ballet.
Okay. So now it's legal, and you've got a mad scramble to see who is going to capture this market in New Jersey first. And you have these brick and mortar places partnering with more experienced companies that are already used to taking internet sports wagering, a lot of them from Europe, and trying to race to the market first. So walk us kind of through how that all played out as the racetracks and the Atlantic City casinos are racing to be the first ones out there accepting wagering and being the dominant player in New Jersey.
Okay, the first one actually again was Monmouth Park to open up their sports book. They did that with William Hill. Joe Asher, who I forget which betting platform he's with now, but he's with one of them, was running William Hill, and he was a former horse guy. So he knew all the horsemen. He came out of Delaware. So they had worked out that arrangement with William Hill, which was a huge sports book in Vegas, as most people know. And so that
are we talking internet or in person?
This
Sports
is
betting.
This is sports wagering, sports book, as in on the ground, not
On the ground. Okay. Because the license allowed you to both have a sports book at your location and be on the internet.
Right, the skins.
Okay, so Monmouth was the first to open an actual walk-in sports book.
Right.
Okay.
The first one to come online, I don't remember, I'll be honest with you. But for some reason, I want to say it was Borgata. It might have been Golden Nugget. Because they were kind of the market leaders initially until Caesars got up and running, and now I think it's Borgata and Caesars. PointsBet. I'm trying to think of the others. Golden Nugget, DraftKings, FanDuel. They're your leaders on the platform side.
So there was, I presume, a scramble among the land-based casinos to put together these partnerships with the ones that are already doing it online.
That's where your Division of Gaming Enforcement is so important, because they have to facilitate all that. They have to get the licensing done. They have to make sure that these companies are legit, that there's not bad money there that's supporting them, meaning offshore money that is organized crime. So they do a complete vetting of the corporation. Now it makes it easier on a Caesars or a BetMGM, because they already have the casino license. So they've already been licensed by that entity. Mm-hmm. So it would be much easier for them to open up Caesars.com or BetMGM.com than it would be if you were Bet365 or 888s or PointsBet, because you don't have bricks and mortar. So those individuals had an advantage because they had a license already. So this was a new kind of license, but they didn't have to go through that same vetting process that a brand new company coming to New Jersey would. So those companies had to come in second to that which had those initial licenses tied to the casino bricks and mortar.
Well, and it's the first time anywhere in the United States where sports betting is happening online. So how you regulate that and what type of licensing and controls you put in place was being invented for the first time.
Yep, and it was invented in New Jersey. And that's why I say most other states predicate their regulations and their laws on the New Jersey law, because it's been so well enforced. Its rollout has been not problematic. We have really great regulators, and they know what they're doing with this new form of wagering. They brought in a consultant from Malta, because many of the entities in many of the countries that allowed it, and the entities that were the same ones wanting to come into Jersey, were in these jurisdictions, who helped them craft the legislation so that it would pull the best from all of those jurisdictions that had it already for years in Europe.
Right. Europe was way ahead of us, and therefore the companies in Europe kind of came in and helped lead it here. So walk us through the winners and losers since this is launched in New Jersey. First of all, let's talk about the racetracks, because this was really important to save the racetracks. How have the racetracks done since this legalization?
It's helped. It hasn't saved them. They still have a what is considered a purse supplement that comes out of our general fund to counteract the impact of neighboring racetracks who have casinos. So they get both the support from their sport, horse racing. Then they get the money from off-track wagering, and that comes the OTBs, both in person and then account deposit wagering, which is by the phone, just on horse racing. And then they get the money from sports wagering. So they have a couple different pots supporting them. So they're surviving. Are they thriving? No. They've had to reduce racing days to allow for the purses to be competitive with states around them. So thoroughbred racing, when I was involved with the Thoroughbred Horsemen, and I worked for their president for 10 years exclusively, we're about 120 racing days at Monmouth, and now that's around 50. So
okay, but are they separately making gobs of money from sports betting that they're putting in bucket over here, and here's the horse racing bucket, and we're only making a little here, so we're not going to race that much, but over in this side we're making lots of money?
Sports wagering is not a big money producer for any of these platforms, because the internet gaming is, because you keep more of your profit. The margins for sports wagering are much smaller. So that's why you want that bigger footprint, like with poker, because it's the way it's not pure pari-mutuel, but it's more pari-mutuel than it is betting against a house, even though because the morning line is set and it's set by the house and you have to pay a vig to the house. But at the same time, it is more pari-mutuel in nature, so more like horse racing or poker. And so when you're looking, and this is why Texas and California are why it's, these companies want it so much in these areas, is you have more population to support that kind of wagering. And the bigger your pot, more betting is bet, it makes up for that smaller percentage.
Right.
The smaller the state, the greater the capital, less people betting, vig being smaller, not making as much. So New Jersey had the benefit of almost 10 million people. New York has, I don't know, I think it's somewhere around, 17, 18 million. Pennsylvania is 14 million. California is 37 million, I think. It's like the same as a small country. You get California up and running, sports wagering platforms can make a huge amount of money because the footprint's so large and then the population's so large. And each one of these states are doing it, and it makes it very difficult for the infrastructure part of it. But you have to go through the licensing process, setting up your infrastructure, setting up your platform, based on the laws of individual states, and each one is different. So you could technically have 50 different ways of doing it. Not that you'll ever see gambling of this type in Utah, but technically you could have 50 different ways of doing this with 50 different laws and 50 different regulating authorities, which make it very costly to do this kind of thing.
And what has it done for the New Jersey casinos? If I were to walk into some of the Atlantic City casinos right now, would they be looking nicer because they're making so much money now on internet gambling that they're sprucing up their hotels?
I would say that the sports wagering locations in some of the hotels are real draws because they're large, like the one at Bally's Wild West, the one at the Ocean Casino, the one at MGM Borgata, which also has the only race book room where the horse racing goes, the kind of put together. And I do think that, especially for your marquee sporting events, you see large influxes of people coming in and betting. They come with their wives, their girlfriends, their friends, and it adds, especially in those signature days, such a much bigger crowd than ever was there. So March Madness, even during the week, which you don't see often, you're going to see that place packed during that period, and you're going to see betting through the roof. It's well run. It's some of the places are small, some of them are large, but the larger ones. But if you talk to someone who's a real traditional sports wagering type of dude, he will tell you he likes the setup at resorts best because they have big comfy chairs that you could sit and watch all day in a big comfy chair. I have a brother like that, so I'll cut my nose. So.
What about internet? Who is winning on the internet? What website's doing the best?
I would say for sports wagering, I would say DraftKings and FanDuel have a big piece of the pie. I would say Caesars and probably BetMGM would probably be your biggest, mostly because they're names your names associated with sports wagering or casino gaming, and people tend to gravitate to what they know. So before it's the more sophisticated bettor who's going to look at a Bet365 or a Tipco or a Circa or a something different other than your traditional names because of a comfort level. They just have that branding that it makes it more attractive.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it was great for players because there's all kinds of sign-on bonuses that all of them are offering.
Well, and I will tell you, the other way these guys make money is the goofy parlays people put in. They put in these parlays thinking they're going to hit, like the lottery, and they never pay off or very rarely pay off. You'll hear those stories every once in a while on ESPN, but they're not. And if you're going to make money off of sports wagering, it's those goofy bets that people make that are losers before you put them in, much like a lottery bet. So that if you're going to look at a way of making money from this, I would say have more of those gimmicks, have those gimmicky bets that, again, correspond a lot to what was always traditional in racing, like the pick six or the pick four or the trifecta or the superfecta. It's gimmicky way of betting where you bet larger sums and less likely to win. So you're going to make more money off those bets.
All right. Well, we'll have to leave it there, Barbara. Thank you. We did it. I was concerned that the full history would take much longer than that, but I think we hit the highlights, and we'll have you back on to cover some more of the details. It's Barbara DeMarco, Porzio Government Affairs. How can people find you?
PorzioGov.com, BDeMarco at PorzioGov.com. And I'm here in Jersey, or you can look for I'm part of a law firm, Porzio Bromberg and Newman, and they will get you to me. I work within one of their subsidiaries.
All right. Barbara, my good friend, thank you so much for joining us. That was great. We're going to have you back on.
Fun. Okay, thanks, Jim. Bye.
I want you to smash that like button.